Unusually, I'm going to call this meeting to order because I'm the only elected officer at the table at the moment.
We need for a
We need
quorum.
We do
five.
have four.
Oh, we got five,
And
okay.
Jay's been appointed, he counts towards the quorum,
So there's five.
so there's five of us.
My math's not good, but.
He's got fog.
He has COVID fog.
Oh, yes, COVID.
COVID fog.
Oh, fog. Don't we all?
When I first started making presentations in this room, all I had to do was bring a piece of paper.
See how easy things have gotten.
Now it takes two computers.
Yeah, how crazy.
Thanks.
All right, so first item on the agenda, at the January meeting, we had a nomination for Jay to be elected as chair, but then the vote on that was deferred. The other officer elections were done, but that one's still outstanding. So at this point, I believe, Richie, all we need to do is actually just have the vote on that motion. to elect the chair.
I wasn't here, but the minutes reflect that, Director Merrick made the motion and Director Buttrick seconded, so you're correct, it's just been deferred, so the motion's on the table for a vote. So I guess if there's discussion, there can be discussion, if no discussion,
Yeah.
Jay to be the chair.
Since there's no one else here, I vote for it.
Me too.
Any other discussion? All right. So do you want to go down the list? Let's see, Mr. Emmett or Director Emmett?
Aye.
Director Izzard?
Aye.
Director Emery?
Aye.
Director Merrick?
Aye.
And Director Fennell? If you want to vote, you can abstain.
Abstain.
All right, motion passes.
Let's get down to business. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Scott, for getting us started. Call to order. Meeting has been called to order. Are there, on the agenda, it says other matters not listed on the agenda?
So that is normally comments from members of the public. We don't have anyone signed in, and we have one person in person.
I don't have any
Right.
comments. Thanks for asking.
All right, so next order of business is the approval of the January 12th minutes. Assuming everyone has had an opportunity to read them. Do we have a motion to approve?
So.
Dr. Emmett? We have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We show that it's been approved. All right, Scott.
Thank you. And I apologize for using the phone during the meeting. I'm just keeping my notes of the meeting on here because I've got too many other devices occupied with too many screens. So,
Understood.
alrighty, so the next item on the agenda is the Johnson donation proposal. This is a 47-acre property on Decca Farm Lane, and it meets the basic donation criteria and would eliminate approximately 5 potential dwellings. Here's a map of the property. You can see this is just off of Garth Road, near the intersection with Ridge Road, and it's on the Meachams River, largely an open property. Here's just an oblique aerial view from early last year. You can see the river is, if I get all these windows out my way, the river is along this boundary here.
Which would be Meacham's?
Yes.
So the bridge is, Garth Road Bridge is just up towards the north at the top.
Informationally, I know these people. Do I need to recuse myself?
Do you like them?
Their land is beautiful. I noticed that, the big pond. So
Yeah,
I
is that a-
recognize it.
Is that a dried up pond?
No, they
think
had to
it's a
put it
new
in to build the house. They put a big house in, and that's the, I think the county would do it. Because it's runoff.
So the proposal is for an easement that would permit no subdivisions. The existing 6,000 plus square foot house up to 7,500 square feet. So just the one dwelling, no dwellings or other structures in the floodplain, and a 35-foot riparian buffer. This whole border here of the Beecham River, and then I'll just point it. In actuality, the property line goes to the center of the river and up to the far side, but in any case, the property on the far side is under an easement, so that's a shared easement boundary there. There's too much text on one screen. Okay. So the property contains 6.5 acres of critical slopes. The riparian buffers and development restrictions would limit impact on those slopes. There's about 12.9 acres of 100-year floodplain, and again, a portion of that would be protected by the riparian buffer, and also the development restrictions would mean fewer potential structures in or near that area. Property is located in the watershed of the South Fork Grand Reservoir, so it helps to protect water quality and limit sedimentation impacts on the public water supply. Of the 47 acres, about 38 are important for agriculture, as described in the comp plan. 1,300 feet of shared boundary with an existing easement. And this reach of the Meachams is designated as a stream conservation unit. It helps provide habitat for one or more rare aquatic plants or animals. So this property hits several of the acceptance criteria and protected resources. And let's go back to the map there. And I can go back to the proposed terms if you have any questions about that. But that's all I have. Staff would recommend acceptance, and happy to answer questions.
Do we need to clarify if and when that house is replaced that's in the general area? The same location?
We could go back to them with that. There's
It seems pretty limited where a house would go on that property anyway.
well, there's quite a bit of area along this upper section that
Uh-huh.
we can find. We've got a prohibition on locating structures in the floodplain, which seems to be the most important thing. And I apologize for leaving that off this map, but it's obviously all down in this lower area here. So to my mind, as long as it's out of, if for some reason the county stopped prohibiting that anyway, I suppose we might 100 years from now,
That's on them.
then this easement would keep that from happening. There wouldn't be any dwellings or other structures in the floodplain. So to my mind, as long as any dwelling is uphill of that, it's
Yeah.
pretty much the same.
When you say replace, do you mean if it burned down? Or could they just say we'd rather, live over there?
And tear that house down and build another
Yeah.
one?
Not, I mean, it's pretty.
Theoretically,
unrealistic.
yeah.
Pretty unrealistic, but I could do that.
Oh, yeah, it's fine.
It is built in 21.
Still shiny.
I had a couple of questions. So is Daca Farm Lane, is that a private road?
And there are a couple other houses on that same driveway.
And that's
Yeah.
off, that's off the Decker Road.
It's right where Deca meets Garth.
Okay.
I can't recall. I'm sorry. I think it may be private by the time it gets to their entrance. Let me see if I can look that up real quick.
Yeah, because Deca Farm Lane,
Scott, look
Deca
it up.
Farm Road, that was all part of the Hicks family, that farm. So the son-in-law lives in the back, at the top of the property on the right, the cleared spot.
The
I'm just
Hicks,
Richard Fox.
Richard Fox, yeah. Isn't there one in the front, Jay, that's off that road, off Deca Farm Lane? It's not. It's on the other side from Richards.
But this is just the main parcel of the original farm.
I'm trying to get to an answer about that question.
Yeah, I tried
exactly
to
what
look it up and I got a nice map and I looked around and I couldn't figure it out.
I
Are
think
we
it's a
looking at
private
Deca Farm Lane or?
Deca Farm Lane.
Deca Farm
I
Lane.
don't think, I think it's private.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a number to it.
So if someone bought this property later on, that they'd be permitted to have cattle and barns?
Oh, yeah. This
Once
is,
you kept them.
So
As long
you
as they
just
kept them out
can't
of
have
the-
it one
Yeah, I know,
dwelling place.
that's you can live it.
Yeah.
I'm just,
Farm buildings or.
That's nice if they're getting rid of 4 development rights.
a lot of times we see, you know, a 47 or so acre property, but people want to have 2 or 3 dwellings, which doesn't work with the density standards.
So on the rooftops that are there, which one is the house? Is it the one? That's the house, the
That's the
big
house.
one? And then it said they built a barn in 2020, a 1,344 square foot
Oh,
barn. Is that the
okay.
barn?
That's the barn back there.
Okay.
If I can go back to. No, it's not the best view, but, so here's the house. These property lines are not exactly right in the area.
Yeah, they'd
It's
be
hard
right
for
on the
them to
line.
line up. But, then there's the barn up here.
Okay, and so on your, where you have other permitted structures and sizes, you have standard terms. What would that be? They have the one barn there. Are there other structures limited, any limitations or?
There's standard terms in the template. Basically permit residential accessory structures that are clearly subordinate to the dwelling, and then permit farm buildings up to 4,500 square feet, if I remember correctly, unless, and they need permission to go beyond that.
Okay.
So the
What
one
about a
thing is,
guest house?
It's a dwelling.
Pool
that's a, we
house?
would count that as a dwelling, so it
Pool house,
would also be fine.
as long as you can't sleep.
Is it still a stove situation?
It's a kitchen
That's
and
what it's-
a
Yeah,
spend in the night bedroom.
Yeah, we rely on the zoning ordinance definition, which is those 5 elements of what makes up a dwelling. Other holders actually have definitions in their deeds, which is something we might want to consider in the future. Because at this point, yeah, we always end up having to fall back into the zoning definition. It might be better to have our own. But yeah, at the moment, yeah, we would go by that of sleeping, sanitation, cooking, living. The other thing. I've forgotten. That all make up a dwelling.
Deca Farm Lane is private, according to the road index.
I thought it was.
Deca is public and Farm Lane is private.
I like it.
Scott, the steep slopes is the, I'm just looking at a map and it looks like there's significant steep slopes, the map you provide,
Significant what, Rich?
steep slopes.
There are some, there's quite a few that are really just the edge of the floodplain.
Do our easements take into account future commercial activities? If they sold it to somebody who wanted to turn it into a winery and make it commercial?
That's why
I
I'm
mean,
probing.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
they're not gonna do it, but the
I'm
next
looking-
person
I'm looking
could.
for a wedding venue right on the.
Well, now that falls under agricultural, they can do that.
If
I
it
know,
fits
it's-
under agricultural use, then the answer is yes. And
Right.
are there permutations that you can do to make that happen? And the answer is gonna be yes.
But no golf course.
Okay.
You wouldn't do that on 47 acres anyway. But,
No.
No, that doesn't come under agricultural, that's more
No,
recreational.
no. People have argued.
So,
I don't know that you can do de minimis commercial recreational activity. I don't know that a golf course would count as de minimis.
I was thinking more along the lines of wedding venue and turning it into a
I mean,
semi-commercial undertaking under the umbrella of an easement.
it has to fit under agricultural. You can't mow everything down and just build up.
But in point of fact, if you planted an acre of vines, you could say it was a vineyard and have.
No, you have to have a winery, distillery, process it on site. I mean, it's a big it's a big
You're right, there's a lot of
definition.
boxes to
You
check.
can't just
Yeah.
put up a couple of vines and call it an event. You
But
have to
didn't
have
that-
a
didn't
full.
remember we got in that big fight about Ballard's Mill Road where somebody they were importing wine. Through some, but not much, and they wanted, but they weren't, then they wanted to have a venue placed.
That wasn't,
Oh.
that
No, I don't
wasn't
recall
winery
that.
events, that was
Well,
just
I know what you
events.
mean. They had all those signs up. What was it called? On that dirt road. Isn't it on Dick
Water-
Road?
Water Penny Farm, Water Perry Farm,
Yeah,
Oh, is that it?
Water Perry Farm, yeah.
so
And what did they want to do?
They had a vineyard there, but they weren't producing much wine, and they wanted to have a venue place there, parties and that sort of stuff.
that wasn't under easement, that was just a special use permit for,
That's right.
it's called special events, so it wasn't ag related at all, it was just wedding events. Those always require a special use permit, whereas a lot of ag related events are by right.
I've forgotten the one under easement.
I mean, you take, like Mary Mill was under conservation easement and Castle Hill Cider was conservation easement. And they've got a,
King family.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
they make it on site, they checked all the boxes to get it going.
Do we hold any easements where all those boxes haven't been checked?
So easements that we have where there are actually event businesses going on,
Yeah, why?
one that I know of.
That hasn't checked all those boxes.
Well, no, they have to check the boxes.
In order to clear zoning, they have to check the boxes.
Yeah.
What is that?
The RPD preservation tract at,
Ragged Branch.
huh?
Ragged Branch.
Ragged Branch Distillery?
Yeah.
That was a weird case because that was
Yeah.
a really old RPD easement. We didn't have the language we would use now to deal with commercial events.
The reason I don't want to, we'll talk about it. I mean, this has come up to me, I mean, we do a lot of vineyard hopping on the weekends. And I don't think there's a weekend that doesn't go by us, that we don't get into discussion, because we know most of the vintners. Is that, how do you get an easement? Some of them don't have an easement, they'd like to get an easement. But there's these boxes to check, and I'd just like to know. Because a lot of them are just excuses for wedding venue, and then you have the traffic and all that.
That's what I
The
brought up
zoning
before.
boxes are different than the easement. You all have discretion, and we've talked about going forward.
Yeah.
In terms of the easement, and some, I can't think of examples off the top of my head, but there are times when this body has restricted what uses could be done, so, and I know some members are like, we're gonna accept an easement, and the preference is that it just stay the way it is, for forever, but that's something to discuss either on a case-by-case basis or going forward in terms of what we want to do to restrict in terms of commercial activities on property. And I've seen some of the older,
These boxes you're talking about have to do with code, not with our easement, or not. You're saying, you're talking about 5 boxes, I'm not even sure I could,
I think that's zoning.
that's
tough
just
work.
zoning.
That's to get the county to allow them to do it.
Just seems like so many rural counties in Virginia now are really having issues with these wineries, becoming really wedding venues and having buses and just a lot of activity that isn't.
The two most polluting.
Country life.
The two most polluting things we do for golf courses and venues. When they spray those venues, they wear hazmat suits and you can't go in them for 20 minutes. It's really, we'd be better off with the factory.
And orchards.
Yeah, and orchards as well. So.
And you asked the question, would a golf course be permitted? I mean, a non-commercial golf course is a recreational activity, and I think it would be permitted under our deeds, under our easements. They don't have to be. And that's something to think about. And I think back over the Kluge estate years ago, used to have a 9-hole golf course.
Yeah, and
It wasn't commercial, so it's not a commercial activity.
Also, that's not our easement portion.
What's that?
That's not our easement.
No, I'm just saying an example of a golf
Right.
course out on something, something like that. I guess it's not unheard of.
So this is, I was trying to highlight this and it kept jumping around on me, but C there is what our current easement template says about commercial events.
So we have these waffle words like small scale, de minimis.
Incidental to and compatible with the other permitted activities and receive written approval.
So they'd have to come back to us on a vineyard.
And again, I haven't heard any inkling that these particular people want to do anything like that, but they would have to come back.
well, what we're worried about
I don't
is the
think they
next
would.
generation, not,
Exactly.
not these people. What we're worried about is whom we sell it to.
So yeah, if they sold it to somebody else and those people wanted to have events or something, they would first have to establish the ag use to support it to meet the state regs, which you mentioned. And then they still have to come back to this body to
Get it
get
approved.
permission to actually carry it out.
Can we be explicit as to what variety they grow?
No, you don't want to do that. So
overreach.
Scott, are you saying that that is
Overreach.
standard language? And
I-
Yes,
okay.
Yes.
this is our current template.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I feel like we're protected, given the kind of the degrees and steps that they'd have to go through to get to that point of putting in a pivot hill.
And that was why
Well,
we also did that.
Yeah, it's these, you call them dwellings. I mean, if you go to a tasting room, it can be pretty elaborate. You could live in there, just put a cot in there and you'd be all
They don't
set.
find you.
You'd meet all the residential checks, but I'm just curious about that because
There's a
it comes
million
up a
things
couple
people could
times
do to
by
violate.
people who are getting ready to buy property around here, from up in DC and one's from Boston. Just check out it. They think they're gonna come in and get an easement, put a vineyard on it. And be careful. I mean, come talk to us about it first before you even buy it. It seems to me that it's not totally clear in my mind how we've dealt with it in the past. I know we've had issues where there's been the issue of traffic, weigh that. I'm not trying to take all the discretion that we have away, it's just trying to get the guidance. It seems to me there was one that we denied because of traffic.
Was it, if I understand this correctly, so this is the language in our easement, and then that allows them to go to the next step, which is well documented in Albemarle County as to what you've got to do. I mean, it's a major capital investment to process on site, and I mean, it's pretty lengthy. But that just puts them in that realm, which is a big safety
You know,
net.
and they could do that with or without the easement. The easement just adds
Right.
yet another
Oh,
layer.
absolutely, yeah. But that allows them to go and there are a lot of regulations and rules and things they have to do there.
And then this just adds the additional layer of, even if they got all that set up with the state, and this body said, no, your layout or your design, your scale is inappropriate under the easement, they can't do it. So,
But I think the question, or at least a consideration for this body, is that's the current state of zoning. Zoning, based on ordinances, and of course, the General Assembly can make changes to that. And so when you're accepting an easement that lasts forever, those are some considerations, and I think Mr. Emmett's thinking of that, is that what if things change and they open up where you can do more commercial activities? Will they be able to will they be able to take advantage of that language?
Well, would they be able to legally do it? Would it be the present statute as it's changed, or would it be the statute at the time of the easement?
See, we're not locked in on that, and Scott mentioned, right now, we refer to, in terms of us dealing with it, we refer to the definitions under the ordinance. There's nothing in the in the easement that says what definitions we look to. Do we look to the General Assembly? Do we look to Albemarle County Code? Or we have received examples, I think, from Loudoun County, where they actually, they define the terms within that easement.
Don't you
So
think
that's
that
an
would-
option also.
But don't you think that would be a safer
Mhm.
way to protect what we're trying to protect? Because who's to know?
Yes, to lock it in.
Yeah, our
To
easements,
lock in what you intend the easement to be,
Yeah,
I think defining the terms.
because our easement is more durable than
And so
zoning that could shift
Right.
under our feet. So why put our easement on top of a foundation that could get eroded out from under us?
This language here in C was the result of a lot of time spent 3 or 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. Time is weird.
I think I have long COVID too, that I get kind of foggy. 5 years ago.
Something like that, where we worked through how this body wanted to handle potential for easements, because in general, there wasn't really consensus to say no commercial events at all, but there certainly wasn't anything like consensus for a free-for-all. So this was the compromise that this language about small scale and
Yeah.
incidental and compatible was the compromise that we all came to on, you all came to on.
Didn't we actually come up with how many times a year you could hold them?
We've done that
Foxfield, I
on
think.
specific, yeah.
Yeah,
And then also
Foxfield
that we
specific.
also like to kind of moderate and limit scale, we scale the size of the buildings that aggregate number, so they couldn't be massive buildings there too, so that it's.
I just am thinking of a place I was this weekend, and I don't think they have an easement, but they've talked to me about it. But they got parking there for 300 cars. I mean, you know, and we push back on somebody who wants to make a bed and breakfast out of the grand old house.
Isn't there some language I saw somewhere that talked about seeking or paid? Because that would let somebody, have a family wedding or do,
Right.
but it would stop multiple, lock-ins coming or something.
Right, that's the commercial use.
Yeah, as long as when there's a lot of money changing hands,
Aspect
seems
of
to be the place where you wanna.
Well, these are things that we handle on a case-by-case basis, but this one seems to be something that I would feel better if we were a little more precise in our own right, is what we kind of feel like. To me, parking and traffic can throttle some big ambitions to make it a destination. And before you know, you have all kinds of traffic on country roads and Sunday, Saturday, and that's, I think, something I don't particularly like.
Well, and I think what we could look at, I mean, in that instance is can we define what we mean by agricultural equine activities and forestry? Can we do that? Because right now we kind of refer to the county code and the General Assembly's definition of that. And that's where all the tasting rooms and those commercial activities fit in under agriculture.
I think it's that small scale. It's the scale.
Not A.
No,
A is agriculture and.
I know. Yeah.
I mean, we could, if we want to get into another round of template editing, and it's probably about time, we could certainly look at some of the other holders' definitions sections and look at adopting those. Can't recall off the top of my head whose they were, but I know I've looked at a couple from Virginia that have their own independent definitions in each deed.
I think we do need to make it more precise.
because I do find it disturbing that the state may change the rules. Suppose we get an ultra liberal or ultra conservative or whatever government, then they could change the rules, which then could affect all these easements. Because
It
are
could.
you saying that any easement that's already written and in use goes back to the ordinance that we are talking about?
No.
Would it be changed if the state changed
Well,
changed
the
their?
easements won't change. The problem is that our easement language over time has changed repeatedly. and the older ones are kind of loose. Whereas this is, I think, pretty good for setting the expectation, and we could do more. But I mean, the state could make it an absolute by right free-for-all if they wanted to, and we would still have whatever enforcement capability we have, depending on the language we were using for any given easement over the last 30 years. Some of them are really good and some of them are not very clear.
Yeah, I mean, looking at section C, the fact that the word events is in there, this, that,
Is, yeah, a
That-
little bit disturbing.
I mean-
I mean, there's a clear expectation there and there's an approval step.
yeah,
So it's not like we have to make an interpretation and argue about it. If they don't get their written approval, it's not happening.
it's not gonna happen.
Yeah, we
doesn't
can
answer
say
the
that,
question
but
of
if we're
whether the state-
capricious
But that
and
doesn't answer the
obviously
question of whether the state
unguided,
changes.
Capricious and arbitrary. And you're just, yeah.
we could get in trouble with that last clause.
It's also
To
a
some degree, the
monitoring
state
thing.
could make any change they want. We still have it doesn't affect what the easement does. It affects the non-easement properties.
But it wouldn't affect an easement already in place, because you would go back to this
Or whatever
Temp-
language in that deed was. 'Cause they varied.
The specific easement.
Because the easement's like a deed restriction. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah,
No,
it stays in
it
place.
stays with the property until
The
it's.
easements generally don't, I mean, we talk about it, but the easement documents don't refer to any particular state or local ordinance.
We do have the law that, at least with these easements, they're to be interpreted in favor of the conservation purpose.
It's a nice
Whether-
blanket statement.
Whether that helps or not.
One of those ambiguities that actually works for us.
well, actually, I would
Yeah.
have thought it did.
No, you're right, because the general law is that if an easement is ambiguous, it's gonna be interpreted in favor of greater use of the property, which is not necessarily consistent with conservation purposes.
Right, it's a
So the
loophole.
law, the statute that says, no, you're gonna interpret ours consistent with those purposes, actually changes the common law. As long as that exists, that's good. In our deeds say that too. And the purpose of the statute resulted out of a case that went to the Supreme Court, the Virginia Supreme Court, and they said, no, it's ambiguous, so you interpret it in favor of more open use. And I think that clause was in, and they said, look, this clause is here. He goes, well, that didn't change the law. So it was kind of not a good decision, but the General Assembly fixed that loophole. Now, that doesn't solve your concern that it's still somewhat ambiguous and we don't know what the answer would be. And so defining our terms does, for as long as the easement remains as it is and not amended, we've defined the terms.
I feel that last clause would be better off, we had very good guidance. Doesn't have to mean we have it all spelled out, but you get some good lawyers on that one, and wait a minute, you approved this over here, you approved that over there. I know we have some flexibility there. Oh, anyway, I didn't mean to
It was a good conversation to have.
get off the task at hand.
I like the easement, regardless of the overarching points that we brought up. And then I think it's something that we can address, and, I feel some safety in there that it is with prior written approval also, so it's, if something does happen there,
Sure.
it's gonna come across our plate. Does anybody have a motion to head one way or the other with this?
Move we approve it as presented.
Second.
All right,
That's been a good 3 seconds. I just picked one.
pick one. Discussion? All in favor of approving the proposal as is?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. All right, so that was it.
Do they have counsel already? Do you know, Scott?
I'm sorry?
Do they have an attorney yet? That you know of?
Yes. It's late.
So our next agenda item is new business. I brought this up last meeting. The Foxfield Racing Association asked me to bring this to us. As you know, we have an easement, hold an easement on Foxfield, and they are allowed to choose 2 fundraisers per year. And this year they've chosen to team with Festival of the Wheel.
Of the food?
Of the Wheel.
What is that?
It is, it's an antique car show, and it's a nonprofit, and its main benefactor is the UVA Cancer Patient Care Center. And then they're also donating to the 503(1)(c) of Foxfield that goes to equestrian.
So it's going to the university.
Both. It's going to the hospital and to Foxfield.
Money seems not that big.
They don't know
Dispersed.
that the donations are gonna be based on gate receipts.
So a lot, that's interesting.
And it falls within the parameters of the easement also. That's along Jack Fest is the other one that we've supported. That Foxfield has supported too.
So that particular easement gets into a lot more detail about events than most do. And there's a list appended to the deed of easement that says which events that they had done in the past would be allowed to continue, and this is one of those.
So is this different from what they've done in the past? Is this outside of that?
I think this has been going on for a long time out there. I've never been, but I.
That's- They've had car shows out there, but not with this specific organization.
They're permitted as one car show along with one of the races. I can't remember, it's a spring or
It's
fall.
the fall
The
race.
antique car show that goes along with that.
Yeah.
They had the one charity event, which was Jack Fest, and they're permitted 2 charity events.
So this is their
And
other.
there's a farmer's market that they also,
No,
I don't.
that no longer,
there used to be a farmer's market on site, but it's moved in closer to Barracks Road.
Oh, yeah.
That's listed or not.
So are you saying that it's allowed 1 car show and 1 nonprofit or
Fundraiser.
fundraiser, and this serves for the one for 1 a year?
It serves for the fundraiser.
Oh,
It serves for one of the 2 fundraisers.
The 2 per year, and then a whole menu of things that they can pick from.
How you can do
in a given year.
fundraise,
They can
okay,
pick
what you
2
can do
of
to
those per
fundraise,
year.
I got
Yeah.
you, I got you. 2-tier system.
And I could see them potentially coming down the line now that they've kind of, they're getting their mission and their comfort on the property, and that they could potentially amend it, taking events off or substituting. You know, they had an equipment show out there that doesn't happen. There are a few things that were kind of drawn from a list of historical events that happened out there that just they're no longer relevant.
I just find it slightly disturbing that it's benefiting an organization as large as the university. That's a long way from what I call charity. The charity event. It
The
may be a
condition was-
501c3, but it's about the biggest, most profitable 501c in the world.
Then-
I just find that disturbing, because
Could
you
do-
don't want that to keep happening, so they end up being, Foxfield ends up being a conduit for the university.
Well, the only requirement was that the fundraiser benefit an equine organization, and I suspect the charitable arm of Foxfield satisfies that. There wasn't a prohibition about other, benefiting others, it just had to. And I think we went with that with Jack Fest in terms of their commercial activities, you had to benefit the equine activity, and so they had to pick something. Now, whether they did that 100%, I suspect they didn't, but
Is there a set percentage or a minimum?
No.
And it has to be equine money?
it has to
Could be
benefit
5%.
an equine charitable organization.
Right.
It doesn't say you can't benefit other ones, you just
Right.
have to.
And it doesn't say how much benefit there is.
Or how much there is,
Yeah.
yeah. And the way that Foxfield has set it up that I learned is that they have their own nonprofit that gets donated to, and then they disperse it to other equestrian,
And it's a registered
Cheers.
charity.
and it's a registered charity.
So let's follow up on this. Yay, because you can just see this happening again. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah, that's what worries
it
me.
happens with the turkey trot. Every year. Now, how much they're raising the turkey trot.
Is that
At Boar's Head. Running.
Oh, at Boar's Head. Oh,
Boar's
okay,
Head,
okay.
Turkey trot, yeah, I'm still doing that. These
They
days
own the
I'm-
Boar's Head.
Huh?
They own the
I
Boar's
know.
Head.
Everybody owns
I
it.
know, but it's still a non-profit, at least we're told when we buy the tickets. So, but it's benefiting a good cause, I'm not gonna argue about that, but it is a university cause.
Right.
The children's,
UVA Cancer Center Patient Care.
who does that? I mean, the one that it's for Foxfield.
Yeah, for Foxfield.
So, I mean, this is,
Yeah, it's not going to the UVA Foundation.
Thank God.
Yeah, but it's not too far off. I mean, it just worries me. The university is really a powerful, powerful corporation. Whether we like that.
it's $1 they don't have to raise for money to buy more property. I don't know. I think you gotta clear the air here because this is this happens more. And it's happening. Not that it's happening on our easements. That's why we throttle back on this conversation.
Right,
But-
like,
But maybe the Foxfield's a unique one. I don't know.
I mean, it is strictly limited in the number of events that it can
Yeah,
hold.
and I thought that was, given the history and legacy of that area and that whole Foxfield, that was a very reasonable restriction.
like it goes.
The wording of that easement is unique to that easement. It
Yeah.
doesn't
Yeah,
apply.
we worked hard on it.
I think as a conservation easement authority, dictating who they give their monies to is way beyond.
I don't
our
think,
purview.
I don't think we have any leg to stand on anyway, but it just does disturb me.
Yeah, and we can voice
Because
our,
in the past, those charity events out there at Foxfield have really been for organizations that really needed the money.
yeah, they
You know, they
gave,
were for small town, organizations, local organizations that genuinely needed the money, whereas now we're into, I just find it disturbing. I don't think we can do anything with it.
Well, next time
It's out
we're
of the
faced with
proverbial
this,
barn.
with this dilemma, we can put restrictions on what's small.
Say, any
Small-
fundraiser except
small
UVA
is.
related.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll go
That's
on
right,
the
let's
table.
put the-
down
let's
as
put
under
the
$1 million.
bullseye on our backs. Great.
It makes me sad to think it's happening. There it is.
I have
Is it-
one other. piece
Yes,
of
Scott.
business. As you all have probably seen, the county is in the middle of a extended comprehensive plan update process. And we have
The
been.
AC 44?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we are currently working on updating the goals and objectives, so the top and middle level policy objectives from the 2015 plan. And we've been going to staff all over the building, looking for input on that. And we've also been going to advisory committees like the Historic Preservation Committee and the Natural Heritage Committee. What I wanted to bring up was the option for you all to get involved in that as well. Either by, well, in either case, I can send you the list of the goals and objectives for you all to comment on and consider how the wording might be updated and improved for this next version of the plan. We can either handle that by just having you all email comments back to me, or I could post a Google document for people to type into. Or if you'd rather have an in-person discussion, we could schedule that for next month. And have you all provide feedback for me to make notes on and pass that on to the comp plan team. So we can do it either way if you're interested, but I just wanted to bring up the opportunity in case you
Sounds like work.
Yeah,
It does, but I think if we're given an opportunity to have input, it
Yeah.
would
To
be
do
foolish
it.
not to do it. However we do it, I think if we have an opportunity, we can't whine about it afterwards if we didn't like what they
Right.
did.
Well, sorry.
Does the comprehensive plan set up bracketing goals for how much land is in?
it doesn't right now.
So,
Land that's in easement,
yeah, well,
well, it does rural
Perpetuity.
area and it does
perpetuity is, yes, perpetuity.
development area, I mean.
And so the question, I'm just curious, I know we're not threatening yet, right? But we have a significant acreage in easements. And I'm just curious if the county looks at that and says, well, it's gonna tie our hands if we, but you wouldn't want that to be expressed that way, but I'm just curious.
There's
We
nothing- there's nothing
we talk
there.
about industrial downzoning.
There are no specific conservation targets in terms of acreages or numbers like that in the plan, which is kind of maddening, but
But
we may
it
get-
draws lines.
yeah, it draws lines. And
Yeah.
it says, here, we want to
Here's
do
the
this,
boundary of, yeah.
but it doesn't say 150,000 acres of easements is fine, we can stop. I hope it doesn't say that. Or
Well, it seems
110,000
like that
acres, so-
just doesn't go, only 5% of the whole county is marked for development. So 95% is already, don't touch it. And that's what a lot of the struggle is we need to grow it a little bit. And nobody wants to,
And-
move a line anywhere, so.
And that's gonna get hammered out, I'm sure, during this process. It's probably gonna take a while. So as we get into late this year and early next year, when we start doing the actual implementation strategies, so the bottom level stuff that tells us what to actually do, we're probably gonna get more into specifics like that. So the other thing to say about that is, this isn't your only opportunity to have input. This is just input on one particular phase of this 2 to 3 year process, but.
I
this is-
feel like it's a good opportunity for us to, a news article that said we've now number one easement holder, Albemarle County just got ahead of Loudon, that, we could use this as an opportunity to argue for more formalized and better staff, not better staffing, but bulkier staffing.
It's the end of
Like,
this, Scott.
I'd be curious to see what support Loudoun County has in terms of their conservation easement programs.
Yeah, I'm working on
With
trying to figure that
staffing
out.
that they have.
I've been asking people all over the state, and I haven't heard back from Loudon yet, but I have from others. I mean, it's clear, if you look at the land trusts in some of their localities, they're better staffed than we are, which is
Yeah.
crazy, because we have there's 110,000 acres of easements in the county, but this body and the county together hold about 30,000, which is huge. I mean, that's a large land trust.
So you said there's about 110 total, but a lot of that's VOF, and then about
VOF,
30
yeah.
is Albemarle County.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I
just
don't know
'cause
if- I hope you all saw the annual or the biannual report that I sent out a few weeks ago, covering the 2 previous years. So yeah, we hit 30,000 at the end of 22.
yeah, just because your job title has changed doesn't mean that we're letting you go anywhere. Not lean on your
So-
institutional knowledge also.
So how many of so you have these lines on the map that are basically edges between, development and non-development. Maybe there's a in between there in terms of housing or residential density or something. But how many of our easements sit on that edge? And what's the potential of becoming islands?
No.
I mean, does the county have
I'm
a,
trying to remember several hundred easements in a 690 square mile rural area. Not that many, I don't think,
yeah,
but it would be interesting to see. I mean, yeah, it's almost certain that there are gonna be arguments to expand the development areas during this comp plan cycle. I don't know, I have no idea what's gonna happen with that. But if the planning commission or the board or somebody says, go find a place to expand because we lost Biscuit Run or whatever the reason is, certainly we're gonna look at, are there easements in the place you're looking at? Oh, not gonna work.
Yeah, or
Um,
scenic byways, things like that, we
Yeah, they
Yeah,
established
so-
entrance corridors.
entrance word, I mean.
Yeah.
I'm sitting over there on Route 20, and I can just see the pressure to move on up. Because we're on the edge, it stops around the Broadwood Baptist Church.
any place we pick, any place somebody picks to be an expansion of the development area, assuming that's gonna come up, there's gonna be, a dozen reasons not to go there because of current rural area goals. And then you're gonna end up comparing various potential expansion areas if they decide to go that way. Which ones make the most sense?
I think we dealt with the Riggeray. We dealt with VDOT, was it the Riggeray? And they wanted to do the traffic circle and 3 corners were under conservation easement. And it showed the difficulty, if very close to impossibility, to improve that road. If there was a 4th conservation easement, VDOT wouldn't have been able to do it.
They haven't put the white fence back up.
I know.
We had made a big deal about the white fence. They have- I mean, the circle's functional now, but the
Well, the
white
property
fence.
owner too was big on the white fence.
Yeah, the white fence
Oh,
isn't
yeah,
up.
and it
It's
was
still
his
go-
job to put it up, right? Not VDOT's. Was it
Well, I
VDOT?
don't know. I thought it was
I wouldn't-
VDOT.
I wouldn't go on that, but it's not up. anyway.
I thought VDOT had to replace it.
Well, good luck.
So anyway, I can either just send you all that list of,
If you could,
Please do.
please.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
just respond directly
definitely.
to me if you have input. That's probably the easiest way.
Great. Is there anything else?
I had a question. I brought it up to Scott. You may not have seen the email, but it looked like on the Board of Supervisors meeting for March 1, on the agenda was the Ace Henley, and our minutes were,
Oh.
and it was an action item, and I didn't live stream it, and I didn't see it, so I
It
was.
wasn't that exciting. They decided to decline to pursue it.
Okay,
So that's no longer an active application, and that round of the ACE program is over.
okay.
Yeah, I talked to Ann about it, and it sounds like that it was just kind of an artifact procedurally left on there, that it wasn't that somebody had made it. Did Mr. Henley actually want it on there, or?
Yeah, no, he
Yeah,
definitely
he
wanted
brought
to
it
do
back
it.
in. We had a really, I thought the January meeting was well done, and I thought the outcome was good, and we had a lot of good discussion.
Yes,
And that it ended up in a unanimous vote with this board, which I thought was good.
But it took the Board of Supervisors very little time they didn't discuss much at all. They just decided not to continue with it. In fact, the only question that came up wasn't even specifically about Henley, it was about that little step in the ACE scoring process where you can get points for bringing in outside funding or by donating
Money, yeah.
a fraction of the
Yeah.
value.
right.
That was the only thing that was even discussed before the act.
Was there, I guess there wouldn't have been any discussion on, when we talked about it in January, we referred to the ACE program as being paused. Is it still paused?
Well,
And
one of the things I have to do now during the comp plan review is also provide an analysis of the effectiveness and success of whatever of our conservation programs. So that we can put some goals for how to continue or modify our programs, including whether or not we reactivate ACE into the comp plan, so that we have some sort of direction on that. So I expect when we get down to the strategy part of the comp plan early next year, it's going to have to something we have to address directly. In the meantime, I'm trying to get funding to pay Weldon Cooper to do what's called a cost of community services study, which lets you look at what's the ratio of expenditures to revenues for different kinds of land uses. Because the board, obviously, when we talked to them about ACE last year, they said, great, floodplains, farms, all that all very nice, but we want to know what it's costing us.
Right.
They want a fiscal analysis, which I'm not qualified to do, so I'm trying to find a way to get some money for Walton Cooper to do that. And that's more of an issue for ACE, because obviously we're spending money on it, but
Right.
I think we can also use that to say, look, what a great job we're doing with the donated easements, because we're not spending any money on them except staff. And we're getting all this value in terms of reduced expenditures over time.
And the people that say you're not getting tax income because it's on
Right.
the
Right.
reduced conservation land use formula. And I'm in favor, obviously.
Yeah, but.
But I understand the counter proposal of, but then, anyway, so that's why they can increase the improvements and the home sites as much as they want, but.
All right, well, thank you all. Again, motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
second, all in favor? All right, thank you all, folks.
Thank you.
Scott, Richie, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
After 5.
Nice to meet you.
So we're gonna all now go watch the basketball game.
I just
So Scott, can you provide a reference to economic, what we're just touching on? The cost of these ones. I mean, we're basically purchasers of reduced. The net effect, when you say, you use the term long-term infrastructure, I think you're talking about, that you don't have to put in the infrastructure to these easements. It's like the,
Less education, less emergency service.
utility, yeah.
So the way these,
But
I don't have the information yet, but I've seen the reports from other communities, and typically land that's classed as residential takes about 1.2, 1.3 times as much in expenditures than it gives in revenues, whereas ag land or open space land is 0.2 to 0.4. So it's providing more than it's costing the county. So if we lock that down through either donated easements or the ACE program, and stretch that over 20 years plus, then maybe we're saving.
So, Sharon,
Bye.
But is there a particular article or book that
I'm sure there
attempts to
is.
do that,
I
or
can
is it-
also share copies of the community services studies that were done for other localities.
It's all about.
Yeah, I just, because that's another thing that I,
And there's tons of stuff out there about making the case for conservation being a money saver.
Thanks, Scott.
Bye.
thanks, Rose. Good to see you again.
I run in
Nice
circles
to
of
see you.
people that own.
Thanks for coming out.
I'm not the 50, 100, 200 acre.
Yeah.
So, that doesn't make too much sense to me. These are questions that they raise.
I used to get a lot of easement proposals from people with, a 21 acre lot, with a house on it, and no division rights. And don't you want to do an easement on here? Well, no.
Well,
I think the music hall that we went through over the 7,000 square foot house, the request for 13,000 and then eventually compromised down to 11,000. I think that's gonna become a tasting room, in my opinion. I can't guarantee it, but
It looks like one on that
it
napkin
looks a
drawing.
hell of a lot like